Is your GoPro freezing? Yeah, a pain in the isn't it? It really is. I use this on my channel. I've got all of the videos that I've done since probably the last 2 years using my little GoPro Hero 10. It's an amazing bit of hardware, it really is. But in the last few months, as you probably discovered by finding this video, if you've got a freezing issue, which I have on this thing, it's just so annoying. The issue being, you would record, maybe get about 5 minutes out of it, and then you'd only get audio. Here's a great example. I was doing a video on how to clean a component on a Mercedes.
So at least I've got a plan B and a spare.
And as you can see, I go to leave the vehicle and I go to close the door. Now you can hear the door close, but the door is frozen and the continuation of the audio you can hear is going on, but the screen, the video itself has frozen with the door sort of half open, half closed. Very frustrating. I continue to talk for probably about 5 minutes and I've wasted all of that footage. So I thought it was just a glitch, tried to do it again, exactly the same thing. And it normally happens around about 5 minutes. On occasion I might get about 7 minutes. Looked into it, tried giving GoPro a call, the customer services, which is really difficult. They don't seem to have, you can't phone them directly, you can only leave a message for them to sort of chat to you back, or you can leave a phone number and they'll call you back. I've done those about 3 or 4 times and nobody has contacted me from GoPro, so quite disappointing there. Reached out to the forums online, there's some great advice that people have given me. There's a link below if you want to know the forum that I used. The key things that I've done on this, and I'm talking about it because I want to sort of avoid you having to do the same things and the guesswork, is everyone's talked about corrupt SD card, corrupt SD card, corrupt SD card. So with that advice, I went out, I bought a new 256 gig, top of the range, the best one I could find, SanDisk Pro Extreme. Did what they said, formatted it in the GoPro, exactly the same problem, still froze. Then somebody suggested format it on the PC, which will take maybe 2 or 3 hours. Couldn't quite understand why, it's a brand new card, but nevertheless I did that, exactly the same freezing problem. I then had the other SD card, which I was using, which I first had the problem with, did the same thing, formatted it, PC, etc. Same issue, froze after about 5 minutes. I tried another one, same issue. I started thinking to myself, well, it can't be an SD card then. You don't have 3 separate SD cards, actually 3 separate brands, and they all give you the same fault. Started making me think, I need to have a look at the settings on this. And I managed to find it, and it wasn't obvious. I hadn't seen anybody else talk about this online, so I thought I'd do this little helpful video, and hopefully let's get your GoPro unfrozen so you got that reliability and you can use it. So this is what I did. I saw the little fault out the corner of my eye on the screen one day, and my thought process then from that started to do these 2 very important things. So have a look at this and I really hope it helps you. Okay, let's get straight into it. So this is what I did. Swipe down from the top, move across, and go into preferences. Now if you go down to the bottom here, you'll see the reset option. And at the top there, you've got format SD card. So that's going to format it on your GoPro. So I did that. Let's do it again. I've got nothing on there. So this is a 256 gigabyte card. I'm going to format it. It doesn't take long. And it's going to format it to have the right files for GoPro. And you should be golden. However, you can also do what I did, which was format the complete card using a PC. Now that's going to take, if it's 256 gigabyte card, it could take 2.5 to 3 hours. So you could try that as well. Also on the reset at the bottom here, I did a factory reset. Now if you've got a cloud account, it gives you a little warning there. You'll need to back stuff up, but you can do a factory reset. It doesn't take long, and you know what, it wasn't that really much in the way of settings that I lost. It didn't take me long at all to put them all back again. So if you like and you really want to make sure you get this back to basics, do a factory reset, but just make sure you back everything up. Right, so SD card's formatted. You've done a factory reset on your GoPro. The next thing you want to do is you want to upgrade your firmware to the latest one. Now you can do that. Connected devices. Here we go. So you want to go into the GoPro Quick app. Now you can do that off your phone. You download on your phone, and then once this connects using the wireless, it will then give you the advice to upgrade the firmware. So just follow the instructions. and away you go, and that's it. So I did that to get the version, I think it is 01.5, which is the latest. So now I've got the firmware and everything updated on this device. We have to do two very important things. I first of all tried to record doing the reset I've just showed you, but I still got the freezing issues. I would suggest you trying it first, just in case your GoPro isn't quite as in a bad shape as mine one was. But if that doesn't work, after you've done the resets and after you've done the firmware upgrade, the important thing that I noticed is in the top left-hand corner here, GPS and app. Now they're grayed out now, and I'm going to show you what I did, because that was the absolute reason why my GoPro was freezing. So I went over into connections here, and I started to think that if I've got 3 SD cards that were all freezing, it can't be the SD cards. It's got to be something, a setting on this device that's causing it to bug out. And I noticed, and it's not doing it now, but the GPS and app, they're grayed out, but when they were switched on, they would flicker on and off as if it was trying to find a signal. This GoPro would also get really hot whilst recording. Now I know they do get warm, but it was getting very warm. And I'm going to touch on something in a second, which is also very important to stop it freezing. So I went, right, let's turn off the GPS. So go into connections, wireless connection is off, that's for your app. Keep that off. If it's switched on, it's always going to be trying to connect. Now you've got to think to yourself, why do you need to have the wireless connection on all the time? You're only going to use it when you're using your phone, whether it's for remote control or you're getting the images. So I turned my wireless off, and that made a big difference. The next thing you want to do is go into preferences and go into regional. And where the GPS is off, I had it switched on. Because remember, your GPS is probably only used where you do things like, say you're on a ski trip and you're going down a mountain, you want to show, the altitude that you're descending and maybe the route. But if you're just using your GoPro to walk around a park, or like me, I tend to sort of do a lot of automotive videos, I don't really need it. So switch it off, because it does use more power. And that, for me, that little sort of trying to turn itself on and off, I think was giving me the problems. And as for the Wi-Fi, again, you don't really need the Wi-Fi unless you're connecting the app, unless you're actually getting the photos off it. Okay, so you can use the app if you're using your phone and you want to use it to press the record and stop. I understand why you might want to use that. But if you don't, and you're using the GoPro, I like to use it with the voice control. So I say, okay, GoPro, start recording, or okay, GoPro, stop recording. You can do it that way as well. So for me, didn't really need it. Wi-Fi off, GPS off, and then I was all good. If I give that time, and I'm not going to bore you with it, that would then go white. And it was fluctuating off and on, and it started making me think, well, maybe it's trying to find a signal, and maybe it's causing the unit to crash. And ever since I've turned that off, so I'm just going to check now, I've had no freezing issues. Let's go back into regional. There's my GPS on, so let's switch that to off. Good. Okay, so GPS is off. The other one I want to make sure is my Wi-Fi, that is off. So let's go back, connections, wireless connection, that's off. So with those two things off now, and they're grayed out in the corner, they were flashing off and on before, and that then avoided my GoPro from freezing. The other important thing to note is heat, and heat can freeze your camera. Now I've always used one of these little things. It's great, they give you a little bit more robustness. It gives you it's a dedicated GoPro case. So you've got a rear microphone and a front, which is handy. Obviously got a little windbreaker on there as well. But the nice thing about this is, if you drop it or etc., it's nice and robust. You open up the side there, you take off the door cover. I can show you this now, why not? You just pop that off, like so. You slide it in, close it, and now she's on. But in so doing, you're giving it sort of less airflow around it. The important thing for a GoPro is actually on the bottom here. These are metal, and they're metal for two reasons. One, for robustness, but two, this is where the GoPro dissipates most of its heat. And now I had these down once. I was recording on a surface like that, and it got really, really hot. So if you ever record and it's stationary, just make sure that if you can, get these two little legs up. Maybe put it on a tiny little stand, but it's off the floor. And it just allows the air around it. And if you actually touch these get really, really warm. So just allow enough airflow around there. And if you have a case, maybe not one of these, but if you've got one that wraps itself all the way around, have a think possibly about not using it, as I said, because you want to try and get as much heat away from the GoPro as possible. So the last thing I want to talk about is settings. Different settings will make your GoPro get slightly hotter as it's processing more information. On the side here, you've got your gimbal effect, that nice smooth image that it gives, which is beautiful, but it actually does process heavy, and you will find that the battery will get warm. So I tend to keep it on high, so I still get a nice movement there, but it is not to the maximum. So if you go into your settings, I've got it as 1080 at 30 frames per second on a wide. The EB stands for the new extended battery, which is really quite nice. So there's a little yellow dot over the battery there. And if I click on that, oops, there it is. Then you've got three options. At the bottom there is usually for a tripod where it's not using a lot of movement, and it's going to be able to save the battery. And the maximum is where you're looking for a nice action shot. Generally, you'll only be recording for 5 minutes, so it can deal with it. If you're recording for any length of time, have a think about taking that off, because you will get a hotter GoPro. So I keep it in the middle there. I'm going to touch on another video later on, but if you go into the actual camera settings, there's a little pencil icon there. So the standard settings, it gives you a slow-mo, which is going to be sort of maximum 120 frames per second. You can record for say a minute and you'll have a huge amount of data saved, but you can go in, you can edit it, you can slow it right down because you've got 120 frames, which is being captured. I've got mine on standard, and if you edit that camera, here are the individual settings. So frame rates, 30 frames per second at 1080 resolution. I like the wide lens for the type of work that I do. It's generally outside around cars, so I like to have that slightly wider look. Hyper smooth, that's that gimbal effect. I have it on high, there's one above it and there's one below it, but I have it in the middle. And here we have at the bottom here some other settings which I generally have off. One of them though, and you may have this on and you haven't realized, it's hindsight. Hindsight is very much, it records when you haven't pressed the button. So it's recording before you've made the decision to press the button. Now if you go into that, I have it off. But if you move up to the middle, it will say here that 15 seconds before you press that button, this camera is going to be recording. And likewise, if you move to the very top, you've got 30 seconds. So let's say you're doing something where it's very quick, you're outside an event, a sporting event, and you just don't want to miss that important moment where somebody's jumping the high jump, etc. It will record 30 seconds before, but it uses a lot of power to do that. So if you're not going to be in that sort of scenario, I suggest turning that off, because it will generate a lot of heat if you've got that on. So my hindsight's off, and these are the settings that I have, and it works. And I find that I don't have now any freezing issues. Everything's golden, and if I press the old record button on the top, it goes straight into it, and we're all good. One of the things that I've noticed now that I've got this camera set up and it's not freezing is before, when you would stop, and it's not going to be a huge film here, and when you go in and have a look at that video footage, before there was a lag. So if I press the little preview button on the bottom here, if that was a long video of an hour or so, I couldn't move that. It was jamming. And I found that as I started to move this left and right, once I got the camera formatted and once I got the GPS and the Wi-Fi off, I could scroll over an hour and it would get exactly to the point that I wanted. I would let go and I'd be able to play. So there's a lot I covered there, so let's just quickly recap. First of all, your SD cards. Make sure if your SD card was working before, then I can't see why it wouldn't keep working. Now they can get corrupt, but you could consider buying a good quality SD card like SanDisk or Samsung. Just make sure you get a decent one, which is not going to give you a generic one. You want to make sure that it's a nice branded one, and make sure you format it. So if you've got your old SD card and you want to keep using it and you don't believe there's anything wrong with it, format it. Make sure you go into your settings like I showed you, clean slate, and that's that sorted. Second thing you want to do, go down to the actual reset option further down for your GoPro and think about resetting your whole GoPro, because sometimes files can get a bit corrupted. Make sure you back everything up, you've got a cloud account, etc. But as I mentioned, it's not so arduous, it's not so difficult to put it all back again afterwards. So I suggest resetting your GoPro. Once you've done all of that, you want to then go and upgrade your firmware. I put the latest one in, it was only one step behind, I think it was version 01.5. Do your firmware upgrade. So now we got a nice clean slate. Battery wise, make sure your battery is fully charged, because that can then halt your GoPro as well. So get your battery charger, make sure it's on the right charger, and make sure you get at least 80% and above. Once you've done all that, the next thing, and the two most important things, go into your settings, turn off your GPS, turn off your Wi-Fi. You can do one at a time if you like, and see if the problem goes away with the freezing. But for me, I had to do both, and everything was golden after that. And the last thing, which is important, is the amount of heat that these things can generate. And that can be not just with a case like I've got here. So if you've got one, remember to get airflow. Remember the bottom, remember to get these tabs up, because these here are actually designed as a heatsink as well. So important to keep the airflow there. But make sure you are not using the full boost where it's that gimbal setup, so it stops it from shaking. Make sure that you haven't got the hindsight on too far. I think it's okay for short videos like 2 or 3 minutes, but if you're recording for an hour, that's going to eat a lot of battery, it's going to use a lot of processor, and your GoPro is going to get hot. Please let me know if that helps. I do these videos because I want to help people. I hate having problems, I like to resolve them, and that for me, I haven't seen any other videos talk about what I've talked about, so I really hope it helps you. And let me know below. I'd love to try and feedback some more info, and if these sorts of things are really helpful for you, there's a whole load of other stuff. I've used these GoPros for about 2 years on my channel, and I've kind of learned a lot about what's good and what's not so good. So if you want some more advice, then let me know and I'll do more videos. I appreciate you getting to the end of this video, and thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.
Let's move on, 'cause it's time to move on.